beautiful legacy. Every line, every curve leaves a trace of who we were.
Hello and welcome to A Beautiful Legacy. I'm your host, Tiago Pinto, and this month we're exploring how movement became everyday, the people, systems and decisions that turned motion into something we no longer question. Alongside the regular episodes, I'm introducing something new. Once, during each themed month, there will be a brand special. These episodes step back from individuals to focus on a single brand. Not to tell its history, but to examine how design, communication, and spatial decisions shaped everyday behavior at scale. Because some legacies are not authored by one person, but by decades of accumulated design choices. Before we begin, one important disclosure. This episode is personal. I grew up watching Formula One, and long before I understood engineering, branding, or design systems, I remembered one thing very clearly. Shell and Ferrari were inseparable. That partnership stayed with me. Today, I still carry that memory. I am a Shell customer, and I'll often drive a few extra kilometers just to fill up with Shell V-Power Racing. Not because of technical claims alone, but because trust, for me, was built visually and emotionally long before I ever owned a car. That's precisely why Shell belongs in this series. This first brand special looks at Shell not as an energy company, but as a brand that learned how to speak visually, helping people navigate, trust, and pause in a world that was moving faster every decade. This is not an episode about fuel. It is about design as infrastructure. Let's begin. When we think about movement, we tend to focus on vehicles, roads, and engines. We rarely think about the brands that made those systems intelligible, the ones that taught people where to go, where to shop, and what to trust. Shell is one of those brands. It did not become central to everyday mobility by producing a superior fuel alone. Shell became indispensable by understanding something more subtle. When people are moving, especially at speed, design must replace deliberation. There is no time to compare, analyze, or decode. Meaning has to be immediate. Shell learned how to speak visually, and in doing so, helped movement become everyday. Shell's visual identity did not appear fully formed. It evolved alongside growth of motorized travel, adapting to a world where distance increased, speed accelerated, and attention shortened. From the early 20th century, Shell treated graphic design as more than promotion. The brand commissioned leading illustrators and designers to create posters that were bold, simple, and legible from afar. These creatives were not asked to decorate fuel, they were asked to explain it visually. These posters reduced complex ideas, energy, reliability, quality, into striking compositions. Strong color contrast, simplified forms, and memorable symbols allowed Shell to stand out in cluttered streets and along fast roads. Long before the term brand system existed, Shell was already building one. At the center of this system stood the Pact and Shell logo. Over decades, it was refined and simplified, stripped of detail, clarified in outline, and strengthened in color. The goal was not aesthetic purity, it was recognition at speed. The Shell logo came to function less like a trademark and more like a wayfinding infrastructure. It was something drivers could recognize instantly, even peripherically, even while focused on the road. Shell's visual authority did not come from a single author. It was built across decades by designers who understood that mobility required a different kind of communication, one designed for movement rather than contemplation. One of the earliest was Edward McKnight Kauffer. His work for Shell in the interwar period helped shift the brand away from illustrative ornament and toward modern abstraction. Kauffer understood that energy belonged to a mechanized world, and his posters introduced bold compositions, reduced form, and strong color contrasts that could be read quickly and remembered easily. He helped Shell look modern at a time when modernity itself was still unfamiliar. Hans Schleger, known as Zero, pushed this logic further. Where Kauffer modernized Shell's voice, Schleger optimized it for speed and repetition. His designs assumed distracted viewers as fleeting glances from moving vehicles. Reduction, clarity, and instant comprehension became priorities. Under Schleger's influence, Shell's visual language began to behave like infrastructure, repeatable, scalable, and reliable. Decades later, as Shell expanded globally and media multiplied, a new challenge emerged. Not recognition, but consistency. This is where figures such as Michael Wolff enter the story. Wolff represents a generation of brand thinkers who translated existing visual languages into governance systems. His contribution was not an aesthetic invention, but protection, ensuring that Shell's identity could survive scale, regulation, and digital complexity without losing clarity. Together, these designers did not decorate Shell, they ensured that it could be seen, recognized, and trusted, again and again, over time. As cars enable longer journeys, another problem emerged. Where could people stop? Early motorists faced uncertainty. Fuel quality varied, locations were inconsistent. Stopping often meant improvisation. Shell recognized that trust in mobility required more than a product. It required places. Shell service stations became one of the earliest examples of standardized roadside architecture. Their design followed the same principles as the graphic identity: clarity, repetition, and reassurance. Bright lighting ensured visibility at night. Canopies framed the forecourt clearly. Circulation was intuitive. Colors matched the brand language drivers already recognized from posters and signs. These stations were not merely functional. They were communicative. They taught drivers where it was safe to pause. In this sense, Shell stations anticipated ideas later formalized by architects and planners. That movement requires rhythm, that rest must be designed, and that confidence is spatial as much as mechanical. Shell did not invent the motorway stop, but it normalized the idea that stopping could be predictable, legible, and calm.
Beautiful legacy.
Shell's communication went further than identity and architecture. It also embraced education. Throughout the mid-20th century, Shell produced advertising that explained rather than exaggerated. Posters and print campaigns described how engines worked, why lubrication mattered, and how fuel quality affected performance and longevity. This was not fear-based communication, it was assumed intelligence. It treated drivers as participants in a system, not passive consumers. By doing so, Shell played a quiet but important role in teaching people how to live with cars. Energy, invisible, abstract, and potentially dangerous, became understandable. This educational tone built a different kind of loyalty, not emotional attachment, but confidence.
Beautiful legacy. Every line, every curve leaves a trace of who we were.
Perhaps Shell's most sophisticated move was how it connected the extremes of mobility with everyday driving. Motorsport represents the most demanding conditions a vehicle can face: heat, pressure, failure at speed. Shell recognized that racing could function as a laboratory, not only for engineers, but for storytelling. Through its long-standing partnership with Ferrari, Shell positioned itself at the highest level of performance. But crucially, it did not keep that performance isolated. Advertising collapsed the distance between the racetrack and the forecourt. The claim, Shell V-Power, the Ferrari fuel for the road, did something very precise. It reassured everyday drivers that what they were putting into their cars was not generic energy, but tested under the most extreme conditions imaginable. This was not aspirational fantasy, it was a transfer of credibility. Motorsport gave Shell authority. Design and communication translated that authority into everyday relevance. In this way, Shell achieved something rare. It blended spectacle and normality without breaking trust. The world we inherited from Shell is one where mobility feels supported rather than uncertain. We recognize a service station instantly. We understand its function without instruction. We trust its lighting, its layout, its signage. We rarely think about why. That invisibility is the measure of success. Shell helped establish a model where visual identity works as navigation, architecture communicates safety, advertising educates rather than distracts, and performance narratives flow into everyday life. This is not branding as decoration, it is branding as infrastructure. Shell never positioned itself as a cultural hero. Its influence is quieter than that of a car designers or racing legends. But without Shell or brands like it, movement would have remained fragile, uncertain, and stressful for far longer. Shell did not just fuel cars, it fueled confidence. By learning how to speak visually, through design, space, and communication, Shell made an invisible product legible, trustworthy, and human. It helped drivers move without thinking about moving. And that, truly, is a beautiful legacy. I hope you enjoyed this brand special. We will be back on Tuesday for more. You have been listening to A Beautiful Legacy. If movement inspires you, follow the show and join me again on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Until then, keep noticing the beauty people leave behind.
Beautiful legacy. Every line, every curve leaves a trace of who we were. In the shape of a chair, in the light on a wall, someone's dream still stands tall. But